Well, the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot wants to know who organized the attack, with particular focus on former President Trump. There are others who are focused on the still simmering question of who participated in it and why they participated. Were they motivated only by the false idea of a stolen election, or was there something deeper, something that won't pass as quickly as a single campaign cycle? Well, researchers at the University of Chicago have been looking into these questions, and they find evidence of a conflict here in America, a conflict smoldering underneath all the other conflicts. And it begins with a single fact. More than 90% of the people arrested for the attack on the Capitol were white. And the key characteristic, according to the researchers, uniting these attackers was not ideology or geography, but in fact race. Quote, "They come from counties where the white share of the population is declining fastest." Well, earlier this year, you'll notice my winter coat in these pictures, we visited a place that has already experienced a sudden demographic change. It's a city in Pennsylvania where white Americans, accustomed to being an overwhelming majority, are quite suddenly not. We arrive in Allentown, Pennsylvania, one day last winter, and to us, absolutely nothing seems out of the ordinary. But talk to Ed Frack, and he'll tell you that's because we haven't lived through the changes here.
My mother grew up a couple blocks away, 6th and Liberty area, and it just, back then you could walk around, you could leave your doors unlocked.
As a kid, I mean, Allentown was amazing because we have
Ed's friend Gary Iacocca also remembers that older Allentown and the nonstop crowds that used to shuffle through the hot dog shop his grandfather opened after coming here from Italy.
I will tell you, the original Yakko's was open at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we closed at 1:30 at night, and we were busy all day. Well, this was a blue-collar town. Third shifts, they would get off, they'd come down to Yakko's, they'd get a couple of hot dogs, drink a beer, and go home.
And while that family business continues in other locations, the original Yakko's is gone, closed after 82 years.
The problem is the neighborhood began to change. As other little restaurants opened up, you know, Hispanic restaurants, soul food restaurants, Asian restaurants, that became a little more competitive. I remember clearing it out. It was heartbreaking because, you know, I grew up sad. Very sad.
I'm kind of upset on how some of the stuff has gone.
As for Ed Frack, by the time his mother passed away in 2020 at 90 years old, he says it had been at least a decade since she felt at home.
It was just a different kind of culture. People talked, people said hello, shook your hand, and now it's, you know, a little bit different.
Frack says he often doesn't see the same level of pride or consideration.
That's Allentown.
What's changed is not only the culture or economy, but the people. In the 1970s, Allentown was 97% white. By 2020, though, the white share of the population had plunged to 31%, as Hispanic residents became what the local paper calls a strong majority.
The men, women, and children who come.
And just as it took years for previous waves of immigrants to be accepted into their communities, there's a sense of tension here. So just to be clear, there are white people in Allentown who think that the problem with this street is all the non-white people who've moved in. That's why the pride has declined. That's why the condition of the street has declined. Do I have that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those people are out here.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the more interesting theories about the riot in the Capitol on January 6th is that the people who went, the biggest predictor of whether they would go was whether their county had the loss of the white population relative to minorities. Does that surprise you?
No, not really.
Why not?
We had some folks right from here ago. After our conversation right now, you know, yeah, I could see that more so than what I would have thought before.
Most of America, not just Allentown, is changing, at least demographically, according to census data. The number of white Americans dropped last decade across 35 states and in 3 out of 4 counties. In headlines you may have seen, America will no longer have a white majority by 2044.
We're in an explosive moment in America right now. Michelle Norris has been covering this long moment in America for more than a decade, reporting in National Geographic back in 2018 that some white Americans react anxiously and angrily to a sense that their way of life is under threat.
People feel like something is being snatched from them sometimes. And even though it's not something that is tangible, community pride, a sense of belonging, a sense that this is my town and we built it, and now it doesn't feel like it's mine anymore.
It's not the one that they grew up in.
And the irony is, for many of the immigrant families that came there, people were saying the same thing about them when they arrived.
So that idea of something being snatched from them, it makes me think of former President Donald Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." It's nostalgic.
Well, nostalgic can be sweet, and sometimes nostalgic can be toxic.
The concern is that toxicity can sometimes tip into outright violence. Something another Allentown family, the Minayas, worries about inside their corner grocery store.
Thankfully, nothing has happened, but you can never put it past anyone.
Emily Minaya came from the Dominican Republic as a child, and she says she's got a theory about what's driving all this tension.
White has always been equal to superior, on top. And so when you have such a long time coming with that lifestyle, with that mentality, all that, like that notion, to just see it like slip out of your fingers in like just a few years or whatever, it's like, wait a minute.
Do you think Allentown is an example of the future of America?
100%. Even those states where there's probably no Hispanics at all, no black people, they will be seeing a lot of that in the next few years.
So for someone who hears that sentence and thinks, uh-oh,
Yeah.
even a little bit, you say what?
I don't know. It wouldn't be very nice to say it on TV or whatever. Suck it up, and it's gonna happen. That's it.
So while things may feel different for those living in Allentown, our first impression was the right one. Nothing about this is out of the ordinary.
The country is changing, and in some ways people are afraid of change that has already arrived. It's already here.
How bumpy of a ride are we in for?
It's very bumpy. I mean, put your seatbelt on. It's going to be a very, very, very bumpy ride.
Michelle Norris is one of the best in the country when it comes to talking about these issues and explaining them. On the subject of putting your seatbelt on, I mean, the reason we went to Pennsylvania is because it sent the second highest number of rioters. They hailed from there on January 6th. And also, almost every county has seen a decline in the white population there. But again, this is really a national story. Most Americans, 80% live in a county where the white population has declined. And for most people, that's fine, or it's welcome. It's even something to celebrate. But there's a portion that the University of Chicago has identified for whom it's very dangerous. And one more note, I just want to shout out Ed Frack and Gary Iacocca. I appreciate them talking with me.
Yeah.
They welcome the new residents, but they're in touch with this part of town and part of their state that maybe is less welcoming and not comfortable with the change. They say these new folks are no different from the Germans and the Italians who weren't exactly welcome when they came not so long ago.
Yeah, and since the quote-unquote discovery of America, this country has been built from change. So regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic class, that change around you looks like, it's up to us to adjust. We all are in pursuit of this American dream, right? Roof over our head, clothes on our back, food on the table. And we want our kids to be raised in a harmonious society. We have to accept what change is. I once heard something, I'll leave everybody with this. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. And it's up to us to grow with change. You don't have to like love, but coexisting, that's something we all can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Blame somebody else for your problems, and that's where the trouble begins.
It's not going to be
Not
easy.
somebody else's fault.
Great piece.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Great
guys.
piece.
Appreciate it. All right, and you can hear more of my conversation with journalist Michelle Norris on today's CBS Mornings podcast. You'll learn what led her to create something very interesting. It's called the Race Card Project. It invites people to distill their thoughts about race, their experiences, their observations into a sentence of just 6 words. In most years, most of the people responding are white people, interestingly enough.